my name is Brittany Gibson and I'm the Associate Copy Editor at the Daily Targum, and on this episode of Brittany Makes, I'm going to show you all the basics to get started this knitting season. For this project, all you'll need is any kind of yarn and a pair of knitting needles that correspond to the size. You can usually find that information somewhere on the label. So the first thing you're going to do to start your project is grab your yarn at the end, and you're going to have to cast on a certain number of stitches. This will be the width of your scarf eventually, so you can kind of play around with how many you'd like. I prefer thicker scarves, so I usually cast on about 20 to 30 stitches. But you can also look at patterns if you're not sure as well. There's a lot available online for free. The first thing you're going to do is make a slip stitch and put that on as your first stitch casted on. And then you'll hold the needle in your right hand and thread the yarn through your other hand like this, and loop around to create another stitch. Did that make sense to you, what I just did? It's like you thread through your palm, pull it out, and then go in with your thumb, and then pull it taut. And so we'll do that about 20 times. 18, 19, 20. So once you've casted on all your stitches, you're ready to start knitting. The first project I recommend if you're a beginner would be to just make a scarf and just knit the whole way through. Grab your first stitch and your other needle. You'll thread it behind the first needle. You'll take the yarn, wrap it around the needle you threaded it, slip it under the first needle, and then slide it off. So now you'll have one stitch on your new needle and 19 on the other side. Then you'll go behind the next stitch, wrap the yarn around the threaded needle, slip it underneath, and then slide it off. And you'll do that the whole way through. Alright, and then when you get to the last stitch on your row, so you have 19 on your new needle and 1 on your old, you do the exact same thing, just like that, and slip it off, and then you switch hands with your needle. And so your old needle becomes your new needle, and your new needle becomes your old needle, and then you just go around in the row again. And that's it. So that's how you do a knit stitch. The next thing we're going to learn is the purl stitch. It's a very similar technique. The only thing you're going to do is with your new needle, you're going to thread through the front and make sure your yarn hangs closer to you instead of behind you. Wrap it around this way and then slide it off through the back. So your yarn stays in front of you. Come in through the front, wrap it around this way, and then slide it out through the back. And then when you get to the last stitch, it's the same thing again. Go over, around, and slip out, pull it taut, and then you can continue going on from there. A more intermediate project would be something like the seed stitch, which I'll show you right now. So all you need to do is cast on an even number of stitches, and then for the sake of this example, I didn't do very many, otherwise I would do much more for a thicker scarf. And what you'll do is your first row, you'll knit 1 stitch, move your yarn around the new needle, and then purl the next stitch. Then move the yarn back, knit the next stitch, move the yarn forward, purl the next stitch, and continue that for the rest of the row. Then when you get to the end of the row for your next row, the last one we knitted first and then purled. This one we're going to purl first and then knit, and it's the same kind of process where you have to move the yarn in between every stitch. If you don't move the yarn, then you'll cast on more stitches as you knit, and it might mess up your pattern. And then you just go on from there until the scarf is the length that you want it to be. And in the end, that pattern looks something like this, where you get little seeds and bumps the whole way through. And depending on your color yarn, it'll show up more or less. Now for a more advanced knitting project, I'll show you how to do some double-sided knitting. So this is where you'll cast on with 2 colors at the same time. And you'll cast on stitches normally, pretending that the 2 threads of yarn are just one. And then you'll start your row knitting both of them together as you would pretending they're just 1 thread of yarn. But then what you'll do is you'll knit whatever color is facing towards you as a single thread of yarn. Bring both over and purl the single thread of yarn that's facing outwards, just like that. So you'll knit 1 thread, bring both pieces of thread over, purl the next one singularly as well, and then bring them both over to the front. And then when you get to the last stitch, treat them as 2 together, and just do 1 knit stitch at the end of the row. Pull it taut. Old needle becomes new needle becomes old needle, and you'll do the same thing. So in this episode of Brittany Makes, I showed you the intros to knitting so you can get into it for this season. The cost is whatever you'd like to spend on yarn and needles, although you can usually find some good deals on Amazon. And the time just depends on what pattern you choose. So for the Daily Targum, I'm Brittany Gibson, signing off. No way to pose, like...